Hello, everyone. So we will be starting in the next 2 minutes. Welcome, everyone, to this training. It's very exciting to have you all here, and you're all on time, which is amazing that you're all on time. So in just a few minutes, so in 2 minutes, we'll start, and then we can introduce the team on this side, and then we'll also get to know more about you. Okay, so it's now 3:05 Kenyan time. That's 2:05 South African time. So I think we can definitely start. So welcome everyone to this media training that is being delivered today by the African Population and Health Research Center, which you will learn more about as we go. But to give you a brief understanding, the African Population and Health Research Center is one of the premier research institutions in Africa. That's based in Kenya, and we also have offices in Senegal. And what we do is we use research and we use evidence to transform lives in Africa. So we work across various research units and focus on various research areas, including sexual and reproductive health, which will be one of the key focus areas that we will be discussing along the way. And it's also through which we have a project that's currently ongoing called the Challenging the Politics of Social Exclusion project, which is a 4-year project that's working across 7 African countries. And that's also working with different regional bodies in terms of how can we best be able to advance issues around sexual and reproductive health. And through this project, we are in partnership with SADC Parliamentary Forum, which is also running its own SRHR project. And one of the ways we thought is it's always best when you collaborate and you complement and support each other. So that's what we're doing through our collaboration. So we are always supporting each other to see how best to be able to advance issues of sexual and reproductive health within the region. And one way is through capacity strengthening. And so this is one of the many sessions that APHRC offers in terms of building capacity, whether it's on research, whether it's on policy engagement and communications. And so we're happy to have you here. I think you're the first group in a series of sessions that we will be having. So we're looking forward to having a very engaging session. Please feel free to ask questions. Feel free to share what you have, your thoughts, your comments, your perspectives. It's an open session, so nothing is out of place. Please feel free to ask us. We are here for you, so let's make sure you also take advantage of us. So with that said, I'll just share my screen. As you'll notice, we have a very diverse and exciting group of people who will be talking to you and guiding you through these sessions. And today's session, and I think we will introduce ourselves. Should we introduce ourselves now? Maybe you can tell me, or should we introduce ourselves as we go? Now, perfect. Okay. So from how I can see my screen, I think we will start with our head of the head of the division, the Policy Engagement and Communication Division at the African Population and Health Research Center, who is going to be here offering the training as with us. Mr. Patterson Siema can introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Maggie. I'm quite excited to be here. So to the rest of the team, my name is Patterson Siema. I'm the Director for Policy Engagement and Communication at APHRC. I've done media relations for the last over 20 years. And this is what I really enjoy doing. So I will be with you for a couple of minutes, then check out again, but still be able to join back. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Patterson. Then the next person to introduce herself, who most of you might be familiar with, or you might have seen in various SADC PF meetings, is Grace Kipunja.
Thank you, Maggie. And welcome everyone to this session. We're very excited to be going through this session with you. And as much as it's being called a capacity strengthening session, I'm sure we'll all learn from each other. So my name is Grace Kibunja. I head the advocacy unit at APHRC, and the advocacy unit one of the projects that falls under this unit is the challenging the politics of social exclusion, like Maggie mentioned, and it's also part of the policy engagement and communications division, which Patterson runs. Over, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Grace. Next we have Siki.
Welcome, everyone. It's very nice to have you all here today. My name is Siki Chigongo, and I am one of the communications managers within the Policy Engagement and Communications Division at APHRC. I'm very excited to be here today and to share some expertise with you as a communication specialist. Thank you.
Thank you, Siki. Florence, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maggie. My name is Florence Sipala. I work with the Policy Engagement and Communication Division, as my colleagues have mentioned. I'm a communications manager handling research communications. I have experience in science comms, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you today.
Thank you, Florence. Maureen, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maureen Konge. I am a communications officer in the Policy Engagement and Communications Division. I work mainly in digital media and a little bit of mainstream media as well. And I'm looking forward to engaging with you in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. We also have, as part of our team, we've adopted him to our team, Moses. I'm sure you all know Moses. He's having a little of issues joining, but he's someone who's very familiar to most of you, and he's also been a very key and valuable addition to our team in terms of guiding us throughout this entire process. And you will just see him as well as we continue with the training. So he'll introduce himself at the point when he joins in. So with that said, I think we can go ahead and start the training. So I'll hand it over to Maureen and Grace, and let me just share my screen. Over to you, Maureen. And probably we can just start. Sorry, maybe let me actually start with the interpretation. Just sharing a bit more. So currently we have interpretation for Portuguese, French, and French. So if you can be able to see on the lower aspect of your computer, you will see the interpretation tab. So you can just click on that and click on the language which you would like to, the language of your choice, and the language which you'd like to be able to hear the interpretation in. And then we have also been advised that once you click on that, you also click on mute original audio. And the reason behind this is that even if you click on just French as a main language that you would be hearing, you would have a lot of overlaps between what is currently ongoing in the session and the French interpretation, which might be a bit confusing. So once you choose your language, whether it's French or Portuguese or English, then you are asked to also mute original audio to avoid any overlaps. And also feel free to be able to ask questions in French or Portuguese, and both verbally and also on the chat, because we also have a French to Portuguese translator who will also be able to assist us throughout the process. So yeah, that I think, thank you. And if that is not clear, please feel free to ask and we'll be able to support in that process. Over to you, Maureen.
Thank you, Maggie, for the great introduction, and welcome to our 36 participants, of course, I guess minus the panelists. I'm sure you saw this poster at some point in your emails, and the subject of our conversation today will be knowing and connecting to your media landscape. This is not a lecture at all. It's actually a very interactive session because we also believe you have your own shared experiences to talk about, and we will pick it up from there. Next slide, Maggie. Okay, so to start us off, we will go through some basic housekeeping rules to help us have a very productive and engaging session. The first one, of course, is to keep our mics on mute when not speaking. Maggie has spoken about selecting your preferred language by clicking on the button. You can choose to listen in English, French, or Portuguese. Remember to also mute the original audio, like she just mentioned, so that you don't suffer the echo of what the other session is, of whatever is happening in the other session in whichever language. We would like to encourage you, especially when making a contribution, please put your video on, unless of course you're suffering poor connection, that one we would understand, but we would really like to see you as you contribute. The other thing is be mindful of background noise. I think that's sorted for all of us. We're in some quiet space, hopefully, where we can have a minimal disruption during our conversation. The other thing, of course, at the bottom of your screen, I'm sure you will see options to raise your hand when you want to contribute. I'm not sure, Maggie, if we have the Q&A on this particular one. Yeah, but we will go through the functions as the session goes on. You can also type your questions or comments in the chat, and we will respond to them as we go on with the session. And of course, when it's your turn to speak, remember to put your video on if you can, and say your name and country. We'll also have some group activities at some point, so we encourage you to please actively participate. It's more fun that way. Next slide, Maggie. Okay, so to the agenda of the day, we already introduced our facilitators for the day. So I will call on all of us on the call to introduce themselves on chat. Right, Grace?
Yes, Maureen.
Yes. Please introduce yourself on chat, your name, your country. Yes. We're trying to save on a little bit of time so that we can spend it on the sessions we have coming up. So basically what we will cover during this session, we will look into who sets the agenda for media, how to build and maintain good relationships with journalists. That's always an ongoing point of lesson, even for those of us who've been in the practice for a minute. How to prepare for an interaction with the media, that is in the sense of interviews. We'll also have a reflective session, and before that we'll have a breakout session where we will talk about what has worked and what has not worked in our media engagement with the different countries. Next slide, please, Maggie. All right, and so I know you guys understand it's a bit difficult to, to warm up, considering that we are all meeting online, but we will try and have some things that can help us know you better. And one of the activities that we have is that there's a link that will be shared in chat. Maggie, if you can please post the link to the form.
Okay.
Yeah, so that everyone can click on it. Thank you. And Grace, please come on and take us through this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. So that this is not, it's not boring and it's not the normal thing, we decided to come up with 2 questions to help us know you better, to help us understand how much work you do with the media and for how long you've done it. So like Maureen and Maggie mentioned, in the chat, please put your name and your country and your organization. Or you could also rename yourself in the Zoom and put after your name, put your country or your organization. That will help us know when you're speaking. And also when you're speaking, like Maureen mentioned, please mention your name and the country that you're from so that we know who is speaking to us. Now there's a link that Maggie will share on the chat, which takes us to the 2 questions that we're going to go through. This is a short activity, and the 2 questions are, you name one media person in Africa that you admire and you would like to meet, and then tell us why do you admire them, and then what media piece has caught your eye in the last 1 month. And it can be a piece in any media channel. It could be TV, it could be social media, or the radio, or any newspaper, any media channel. And then also tell us why this particular piece has caught your eye. So this is an activity that we will do in 5 minutes. The questions are short, so it shouldn't take us long to answer. Maggie, if you have the link, please go ahead and share it.
Yes, I think I'm having a bit of challenges with sharing the form. So I'm just sharing it in a few minutes. Sorry about that.
So as we wait for Maggie to share the form and the link to the form, please put in the chat, put your name, put your country and the organization you work for. Okay, so Maggie has put in the link to the form. So if we can all click on it and go to the form and fill out our responses. It's now 3:21. So by 3:26, we should be done. Has everybody gotten access to the form? You can type in the chat. Is everyone able to access the form? Okay, I can see a few responses. So let's keep filling in the form until 3:26. And also let's keep putting in the chat our names, the parliament that we represent and the country. And welcome to the session, Madam SG Boemo Sekoma. I can also see Moses. Moses has joined us. Welcome, Moses. We have Neo Mokatsa from Lesotho, Mercy Chidemo from the Parliament of Zambia. Then we also have Tambudzai Mutare from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. I hope I'm getting the pronunciations right. Then we have Tanyaradzawa Linda from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. Does anybody else need more time to complete the form?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Daryl.
Hi, I'm Ambitious. I just joined you guys because I was having problem with my laptop, and as you can see, my camera is not clear. I don't know what.
Sorry about that.
So how far, guys? How far are you guys?
If you check on the link, if you check on the chat, you'll see a link to our Google form, which everybody is completing now.
Okay.
So can you see it on the chat?
Yes, I can see it.
Have you seen it, Daryl?
Yes.
Okay, just go to that form and complete it.
Yes, I will do that.
And then when you're done, you can come back to the chat and then put your name and your country so that everybody knows where you're from.
Okay.
All right. Hi, Luisa from the National Assembly of Angola. Welcome. Welcome, Nomesh from the National Assembly of Mauritius. Has everybody completed the form? Anybody who needs more time? You can put it on the chat if you need more time. We're at 3:27 now. Okay, so we'll close that session now, and if we can all now come back to this. And Maureen has pasted in the chat the housekeeping rules in case you need to go over them. So now we can move on to the next session. Hi, Patricia from the Parliament of Malawi. So in our next session, those two questions that we answered, we'd like some people to volunteer and tell us. We'll start with the first one. Name one media person in Africa that you admire and you would like to meet, and why you admire them. Who would like to go first? You can raise your hand. Raise your hand using the raise hand button, and we'll see it. So we'll go through the first question. A media person that you admire, and tell us why you admire them. Who would like to go first and tell us what they put on the form? Okay, we can't see any hands. Shall we select? Maggie, can you see any hands?
I can't see any hands, but I can see Nomesh is smiling. Maybe he has something to say.
Okay, Nomesh, because you're smiling, please, please let us know what you put down for the first question. One media person in Africa that you admire and you would like to meet. Over to you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Nomesh from Mauritius National Assembly. So I would like to meet several media persons in South African Broadcasting Corporation.
Just name one person. One person that you admire. Just one. We can't hear you. I think you're muted. Please unmute so that we can hear you. Nomesh, are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
We just need one name of someone that you admire and why you admire them. Or maybe as we give you time, we can move on to someone else.
Yes,
who would
please.
like to? Okay, who would like to go next?
Hello, my name is Moses Magadza. I admire a Kenyan journalist by the name Jeff Kwenenge. I admire Jeff Kwenenge because of the passion that he puts into the work that he does. And he's a natural journalist. The way you see him speak on television is the way you hear him speak at his home or in a bar. So he's a natural born journalist.
Thank you, Moses. It's true. Jeff Koinange is phenomenal across the globe. And thank you for mentioning that his passion, he has passion in what he does, and it doesn't matter where he is reporting from. Who would like to go next? Maybe I'll just go down my list and choose at random. Someone else, please tell us a media person that they admire and why. From, let me see, Carlos Rebelo. Carlos? Carlos, are you with us? Okay, let's move on to Elna. Elna Etienne. We're not getting any responses. I'll move down to Haja or Tambudzai Mutare? Do we have people on the session? Nobody is speaking, there are no responses. Do we have people on? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Colleagues?
Can anybody hear us? We're not getting any responses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Rohan, would you like to go and tell us one media personality that you admire?
Yes. I'm Rohan from Parliament of Mauritius, from the broadcasting unit. I admire Mrs. Bastana Kumalo. She's a South African television personality. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Rohan. Why do you admire her?
Yeah, at a very young age, she has been crowned as Miss South Africa also. And also because later she has become the president of the Businesswomen Association in South Africa.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Now let's move on to the next question, which is what media piece has caught your eye in the last 1 month and why did it interest you? Everybody should have a response to this because I'm sure we all watch news in the media in one form or the other. I'll start with Linda Manyemba. Please give us an example of a media piece that has caught your eye in the last 1 month. Linda, are you there? Okay, let's move on to Kunga. Kunga, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, please tell us what media piece has caught your eye in the last 1 month. It can be on any channel.
Yes, I came across a retweet of a story that was in the Boston Review about how COVID is being covered in Africa. So this one was more like some sort of like an opinion or analysis about how to talk about COVID-19 in Africa and how people should not suggest, should not be saying, we should not be asking why COVID-19 hasn't been deadlier in Africa, because doing so would mean that we expect that Africans should be dying. So I enjoyed the piece very much. It was a fresh view on the topic at the time. I think it came out, must have been last week or about 10 days ago. That's when I saw it. I would say that I like the story because it gave a fresh perspective on the issue that we have been talking about for a while. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kunga. Now we'll move on to the next session. So I'll hand over to my colleagues. I can see there's some comments in the chat. And then what we'll do, we'll look at your forms, we'll put the information you've put there, we'll put it together, and it will inform the next sessions that we'll have after this one. So thank you. Maggie, over to you.
Thank you, Grace. So I think the next session is now is on disrupting the media, and I'll just hand it over to Siki. And please don't feel free, don't be shy, don't be as open as you can in terms of sharing. And if you have issues perhaps speaking and putting on your video, you can always use the chat to be able to share with us what it is that you're thinking. And also any questions that you might have along the way, please feel free to also share with us. Thank you. Over to you, Siki.
Thank you, Maggie. So today, and I'm glad coming off the bat of the conversation we were having earlier, and you referenced reading about how COVID was being covered in Africa and the narrative that needs to change. I think that was a great segue into this next topic. Just kind of, we want to explore the media landscape as it is today and what that means in terms of us engaging with media and how we should go forward. So next slide, Maggie. So as we all know, things were normal one day and then they weren't. We've seen this outbreak of coronavirus has created one of the largest global health crises in the last 20 to 30 years. And as it's evolved, we've tended to see the deep impact on the way we are perceiving the world and how it's affecting our everyday lives. Across the world, we saw schools and businesses closing. We had stay-at-home orders in place with the lockdown measures to try and curb the spread of the disease. And it began to feel that almost all these safety measures that were put in place to contain the spread of the virus became to affect us even to the personal extent of how we relate to one another. So we saw things like the newspaper consumption declining globally in relation to the media. And although that went down, we saw a surge in other things. So media consumption habits began to evolve. And it is within this context of the physical threat of the virus, social and physical distancing, and public alarm that we have to ask ourselves, what is the role of the different mass media channels in our lives today? And how is this going to affect society across all levels? Next slide. So as I said, this pandemic has without a doubt impacted the world of communications and the media landscape. You know, we are seeing, like I mentioned, an ongoing surge in media consumption as people are constantly trying to seek and remain updated on the rapidly changing crisis. I'll put the statistics there that just show that between 80 to 90% of people are consuming news and entertainment for an average of almost 24 hours during a typical week. So when you see such figures, globally speaking, the pandemic has seen a dramatic increase in the amount of time people have spent accessing information about current events. But as always, with a lot of information comes a lot of misinformation, stigma, and the thing we've come so fondly to refer to as fake news. So the question today that we want to explore some more is how do we intend to leverage this? Next slide. So when we talk about a disrupted media landscape, I think we need to look at whether or not this is a good or a bad thing. As we all know, the mass media have long been recognized as a powerful force shaping how we experience the world and ourselves. But when we speak on legacy media, we're referring to the mass media institutions that predominated prior to the information age. So we're talking print media, the newspapers, we are talking film studios, music studios, advertising agencies, radio broadcasting, television. But now with the emergence of internet, the disruption is moving towards the digital. Whereas old media institutions were centralized and gave communications one way, we are now in a space where we can communicate two ways. So it's as quick as us picking up our phone and scrolling through our Twitter feeds to know something has happened. And we are able to engage in real time in a way that we were unable to do so. So do we really need the newspaper circulations anymore? Are people listening to radio if they aren't in their cars driving to work? Communication itself has evolved, and we now need to think and place ourselves in positions where we are engaging and maximizing the new possibilities and doors that are opened. I think I can give an example for Kenya alone, where there are more than 600 radio stations and now 300 television ones. Are they keeping up with the social and digital media age, or is this scattering audiences? But these are some of the topics we will uncover as we proceed during this session. Next slide. So I think the challenge is to know who your target audiences are and how to get to them. The good side of this problem is that we have multiple options and choices to choose from. But although we need to decide whether we know how to get to our targeted audiences and whether we are doing so to the best of our abilities. Next slide. So basically, we talk about the media, but why do we feel that we need them? We are very familiar with the terms that mass media helps us inform, educate, entertain, persuade. You know, media has the power to shift public attention. However, what you tend to find is that media coverage of health tends to be shallow. And so the COVID-19 outbreak is showing that we need the media, but not only to push the health stories, but the effects health will have eventually on society. So when we talk about COVID-19, for travel restrictions being imposed, the story could be about tourism and travel. The economic impact of fear in the stock market talks about, we go into a full-on economic and development conversation. The cancellation of football matches, it goes on, and that will be something like a sports story. So it's choosing your angles to see what best suits you. It's a health issue that we are going through right now during COVID, but its effects and implications are far-reaching. But before we go any further, I think why we're all here today is to talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights and what's going on in a COVID-19 pandemic crisis as we are in now. Next slide, Maggie. I believe it was the World Health Organization Director General who recently remarked that all countries must strike a fine balance between protecting health, minimizing economic and social disruption, and respecting human rights. However, in Africa, what we are seeing happen is there's a shift of focus to cater to the pandemic that is therefore impacting negatively in other areas, including SRHR. Some of these effects include the reduced access to family planning, a high increase in gender-based violence, where the pandemic is putting young people at risk, especially girls and women. There's the economic stress, which is leading some people to engage in transactional sex and exploitation. And then, of course, with all the restrictions that have come on board, there's the increased risk of many mental health issues, among many things. We are slowly seeing resources redirected away from vital sexual and reproductive health and rights services in favor of other COVID-19 related responses. So it's becoming more and more crucial that countries need to make the decision to how to shift the demands away from simply the COVID-19 to something that is 360 degrees and encapsulates all the important health and rights. According to some projections by UNFPA, some 47 million women may be unable to use modern contraceptives if the lockdown continues on for more than 6 months. This could mean up to 7 million unintended pregnancies with thousands of young lives at risk. So I guess that the question comes into is, how do we go about this? What is our role? And I think now is the time to step up and make sure SRHR does not get lost in the commotion of the pandemic. And the way to do so would be to thoroughly engage this ever-evolving media landscape. Next slide, Maggie. So as I said, what can you do? In the current state of global chaos around COVID-19, the impact on girls and women's sexual and reproductive health and rights is no longer making the headlines. But the truth is, in a post-COVID-19 world, the crisis that will be on ground could be truly devastating, especially on futures of millions of girls. So with the disruption to schools, health services, community centers, we need to find new ways of providing information and support. Information and services that should protect women and young girls' sexual reproductive health and rights are now more vital than ever. So how do we go about this? We need to start actively engaging with media, from the journalistic level up to the big outlets. We need to do so in new and innovative methods. So this could be through informal forums and establishing personal links with journalists. It could be sharing of information through radio, television, mobile apps, and of course, social media. You see, my last point in this presentation is about using your voice to go digital. I'm not sure how many of you actively engage on social media platforms, but if so, I wonder whether you are sharing enough and doing enough to make sure that we are giving voice to the women who can't give voice to themselves, and we continue to do so wholeheartedly. As we explore this, I think it's crucial to delve into another topic, which is how do we work with the media? because now I've laid the foundation on why it is crucial, especially in our pandemic situation. But my colleague Moses will jump in and tell us more about working with the media. However, if you have any questions for me, I'll be willing to take them now. Otherwise, we can proceed with Moses's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brilliant presentation. I'm going to keep my camera off. My internet is compromised. I think it might disturb. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to focus, building on what my colleague has ably just done. I'm going to talk about building and maintaining trust between media and the institutions of parliaments. Now, you may ask, why focus on trust now? Well, this is because trust, once broken, can never be regained. Relations between the media and members of parliaments and institutions of parliaments, as they stand, appear to be tainted by mistrust. On the one hand, members of parliament think that members of the media are out to embarrass them. This is understandable when you look at the cartoons that we see in many of our newspapers, where members of parliament are caricatured by cartoonists. When you look at the unflattering photographs of either sleeping or yawning members of parliament, at the other side of the spectrum, you have got journalists who say some members of parliament are either slippery or they are not very convincing when they talk to them. They are out of depth in terms of the issues that they are trying to discuss, whether they are talking about sexual reproductive health rights issues. Some journalists have complained that they don't get much out of some members of parliament. So we have a situation there where the relationship between members of parliament and some sections of the media is characterized by deep mistrust. So perhaps we need to go briefly into some definitions. The word media is a collective one, which is used to describe the chief main methods of mass communication. These include newspapers, radio, television, the internet, through which individuals and organizations share entertainment, educational materials, news, and sometimes promotional materials. Now, news is also a term that is used to describe newly released or noteworthy information, especially that which is related to recent events that are previously unknown. For example, the sudden death of a prominent politician or a celebrity, a meeting or a training session like this one, ongoing, a summit, discussions or debates on topical issues like how members of parliaments and institutions of parliament are responding to sexual reproductive health rights needs of their citizens under COVID. The appointment of a new committee or an official, a major international conference, a meeting between members of parliament and the people who they represent, challenges that members of parliament are facing or the electorates are facing. So these provide ideas of what can constitute news. But what makes news? The debate is still ongoing, but there is an agreement that sometimes economic consideration is an important attribute that decides or that informs decisions as to whether anything makes news or not. When you go to a journalist or an editor, they want to know how much money can be generated for their organization from running a particular news item. So economic considerations become an issue. Sometimes impact is a consideration. How many people are actually affected or will be affected by this which you want us to report about? Timeliness is another consideration. When did this thing happen that we want to report about, or when will it happen? Sometimes oddity is a characteristic of news. What is unusual about what is being reported? I give here an example of a 3-year-old walking from some compound, walking 20 kilometers through lion-infested farmland to look for its mother, or a man biting a dog. That becomes something that is unusual and out of the ordinary. Therefore, it can constitute news. But sometimes things like new revelations or confirmation of what people feared can also make news. Proximity and celebrity. People tend to be more interested in things that they can relate to, things that are affecting their communities. A person in Africa may not be very interested in knowing about what is happening in Afghanistan. So proximity and celebrity sometimes, constitutes what news is. So why is it important for us to maintain good media relations between the institutions of parliament and media institutions? Well, this is because the media is still by far, and I'm talking about the news media, it is still by far the loudest discourse in the world. Through it, we can manage and maintain reputations of individuals, of organizations, of programs, of interventions like the one we are busy with now. We can also use the media to manage crisis. We can communicate with our various publics, and I'm talking about people with whom we interact and our stakeholders through the media. We can use the media to create awareness on work that is being done, challenges that are being faced, and so on and so forth. But more importantly, we need to use the media to achieve visibility and stay ahead of the pack, and sometimes to avoid the high costs of advertising. So how do we deal with external media? Institutions of parliament have media or public relations organizations. But how do they now interact, reach out, collaborate with external media? There may be need to develop and maintain good relations with mainstream media, radio stations, newspapers, magazines, television stations, online media, bloggers in your area or area of interest. It's important to know the main media outlets, but even more importantly, who calls the shots in them. There is need to determine who they write for and what they are interested in. Are they predominantly interested in politics, for example, women's issues, health issues, the environment, investment, or are they muckrakers? Are they gossip mongers? Are they interested in education? At what level? Pre-primary, kindergarten, university or tertiary education? Are they interested in gender relations and so on and so forth? Then we now need to decide who we want to speak to, who we want to reach. We want to reach a local audience or an international audience. So it's very important to develop a good rapport, a good working relationship with what I call media foot soldiers. These are the young reporters who are not in managerial positions. Before we approach their superiors to report about the work that we are doing as an organization. When we communicate with the media or journalists, it is helpful not to communicate in tongues, limit jargon and technical terms, but get to know the media, read the stories that they write to figure out what they like most. And if you can support the media by providing high dramatic resolution pictures, ambience, background sound, direct quotes, relevant graphs, sound bites, it makes the work of the media flawless. To the extent possible, we need to avoid ambushing the media. That means we need to give them sufficient notice to cover our work, unless if we are giving them an earth-shattering story that can't wait, breaking news. Otherwise, there's no reason why we should go hunting out of breath to the newspaper or to the radio station, asking them to come and cover what we are doing now. So not interviewing the media, not ambushing them is a good starting point. But what is also important is the need to keep the media posted about what it is that we are doing as an organization. We need to avoid being pests, but we need to establish what the media is interested in so that we can give them what they are likely to be interested in. Maybe we can do this by organizing a meet and greet session, breakfast with the media, especially if you've got a new parliament, new speaker of parliament, new members of parliament, new chairpersons of important committees. You may want to organize some kind of breakfast meeting where, in a very relaxed manner, you meet and greet members of the media. Get to know who is who in the media, what are their interests are, and who can the media contact in your organization if they want to do some work with you. You can hold a press conference if the conditions permit, or you can provide a press release which is detailed. You can also invite the media on a tour of your organization or attend meetings and just listen in like flies on the wall. But it may be also useful to identify in-house experts to provide information when it is required. Many parliaments have got websites which are up and running. These can be used to post news tips, and it always helps to invest in a good video camera and a good voice recorder so that you can provide footage to members of the media who may not have the capacity to collect these on their own. Then, of course, you need to monitor the media to find out what they are saying about the work that you're doing, about your organization. And how do you do that? You do that by buying their newspapers, if they are print-based publications. You tune into their radio broadcasts, you tune onto their television broadcasts, so that you get to know what it is that they're saying about you and your organization. It's easier to do this with respect to print media. You can set Google alerts to know when your program, the MPs that you are working with, have appeared in the media. This is very useful because sometimes you get so busy following what the media is doing, can be time consuming. But if you've set a Google alert, you just get these alerts coming in, and you collect stories in which you are being quoted. Then, of course, the issue of being misquoted. Quite often, you spend some time with the journalist, giving him or her a very sensitive story, sometimes over the weekend. Then, when the story comes out, you find you have been quoted out of context, and you are actually putting out fires from your Speaker of Parliament, from line ministries, and so on and so forth. So if you've been misquoted, how do you deal with that? Do you walk into that newsroom with a club threatening to beat up this poor journalist? Do you threaten to take this person to court? Do you threaten them with lawsuits? Sometimes it is always best to identify something positive out of the bad story that has been written. You contact the journalist. Sorry, you contact the journalist and thank them for their time. Thank them for giving you so much coverage. Sometimes it may not be much to thank them for. It might be just a good photograph of you that presents you in good light for a change. And then when you have broken the ice, you say, I actually think that you could have said this differently. I actually didn't mean it this way, so that you maintain that that rapport. Then, of course, you need to know who is who in the media, in the newsroom, for instance. This differs from media house to media house, but typically any new media house would have at the top an editor. This is the person who decides what goes in or what goes out, what doesn't go into the media. He is assisted by a deputy editor who acts as acting editor in the absence of the editor. But another very important person in the newsroom is the news editor. This is the person who commands and assigns reporters, who allocates stories to certain individuals in the newsroom. He knows who is a good sports writer. He knows who has a passion for sexual reproductive health rights issues. He or she knows who is a better hand at doing a political story. So it helps to develop a good working relationship with the news editor. Of course, there's the chief writer. This is sometimes the most experienced, most capable of the writers in the newsroom. Then you have your senior reporters, the sub-editors, very important people, because these are the people who actually place the stories and they do the layouts. They decide whether to put a photograph to accompany your story, or a graph, or pull out quotes and stuff like that. And then, of course, there are the reporters. How do you then get publicity? It's important to know when the media goes to bed, and to always respect deadlines. As I said, never ambush the media. When using a press release, strive to write a complete, ready to publish article. One of the things that we don't know as we hold this interaction is the state in which what we are calling the media in our various countries is, in the face of massive retrenchments as a result of COVID-19, as a result of salary cuts. Some people have had to take massive cuts in their salaries, which demotivates them. We also do not know for certain issues of morbidity and mortality around COVID-19 issues. How many journalists have actually died from COVID-19? How many are sick? How many are in quarantine? That gives us some idea of the strength of the media houses in our various organizations and various countries. So that when we have expectations, we have realistic expectations. We are asking the media to partner with us, knowing that they've got the capacity to actually partner with us. As I end, always make time. Always make time. When in doubt, if you don't know anything, don't waffle, don't speak things that you may not stand by when they've been published. It is normal for somebody to say, that's an important question. I actually do not have the figures that you want or the facts that you want. Please give me until Tuesday. But make an effort to contact that person on Monday and actually provide. Don't switch off your phone and become slippery. Because when that happens, the journalists will just go ahead and try to prove that they tried to contact you and you were slippery with the information that they wanted. Linked to that, no comment is comment. A lot of people think that it is fashionable when a journalist has walked up to you to say, Madam Secretary General or Madam Director, we heard that ABC is happening in your organization. What is your comment? And then you say, no comment. You close the door and you are whisked off to your leafy neighborhood. The journalist will say, thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much, sir. You've given them a license to go and drag you through the mud. All the journalist has to do is approached for comment. Mr. So-and-so said, open court, no comment, close court. However, this publication has it on good authority that blah, 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 blah. And it's a long, dirty write-up. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Moses. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. So I think we can just have questions, comments. What are some of the thoughts that you're having based off of what Siki and Moses have shared? Maybe even I know some of the things they've mentioned, you could have already gone through them, so please feel free to share. You can also raise your hand, or you can also share on the chat what your thoughts are. Go ahead. I mean, if you have something to share, just unmute and go ahead and share.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with the presenters.
Could you speak closer to the microphone?
Thank you very much for the presentations. I totally agree with what the presentations that have been made. In terms of relationships with the media, in my organization, we actually have done almost everything to have good relations with the media. For instance, we have groups, like we have editors in their own group, reporters, senior reporters, and we can categorize them according to their specialties. And we always get in touch with them through either email, WhatsApp groups, and any other, depending on the agents of the matter. We also, funds permitting, we hold cocktail parties for them. And as you was mentioned earlier, we also have workshops for them, whereby, for instance, we invite chairpersons of portfolio committees and thematic committees to mingle around with the reporters and their editors, so that at least they understand each other, they know what the other part likes and what they want to hear and how they can have a good working relationship. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that, Mutare. So for those who might have had challenges hearing, what has been shared is that how the sort of strategies that are being used to be able to build the relationships with media. So that includes having workshops with them, having informal communication networks where you can always keep in touch and update them in case something urgent comes up, to be able to build the relationships with the media. So are there other people who might have had experience in terms of challenges, maybe even in just starting to build up these relationships? Or I know what Moses has mentioned, there's a lot of where sometimes you can have things which are urgent and you don't know how to go about it. Yeah, so probably you can also just share around that. I'm looking for somebody who has unmuted. I see Haja has unmuted. Haja? Okay. So if there might be no other questions, then I think we can go ahead to the next session, which will be taken over by Grace and Siki. So Grace, over to you.
Sorry, with your indulgence.
Yes, Moses, go ahead.
In the absence of questions, I wanted to ask a few questions to Mutare. Mutare, you say that in your organization, you didn't say which organization this is, so it's difficult to say where it is. But anyway, you said that in your organization, one of the good things that you have done is that you have come up with categories of these journalists. You've got editors, a group of editors, you've got a group of reporters, and so on and so forth. And then, if I heard you correctly, you say that you sometimes you decide who to contact, depending on the urgency of the matter. And when you have your workshops, you invite them. My questions are, what do you do? How do you explain to me, like I'm a 5-year-old, when you want a reporter to come and attend one of your workshops, do you identify journalists in the newsroom whom you think do a good job in writing about particular issues, and then you send invitations directly to them, so that when you write to the newspaper, you say, we want to invite Mr. Moses Magaza to come and attend this workshop, which will take place in Kariba. So who actually invites these journalists? And added to that, what has been your experience when you now look at the outcome of this investment? Have you seen an increase in the coverage that you get from these newspaper or media organizations?
Thank you very much for your question. What we have done in trying to build up the relationships with the media personnel is that we know them. For example, parliamentary reporters. We know who are the parliamentary reporters, those who cover parliament. And we also know through the relationships who are the, for example, environment, who are the journalists who cover environment from every media house and other issues. So if a portfolio committee on environment, for example, is going to Kariba, I'll ask the assignments editor to give me an environment whom I even actually know. And I can even tip that journalist that I have this upcoming, but I'll certainly go through the news assignment editor. I hope that one is answered. And we have so good relationships that we have really improved, I think, over 50% of coverage ever since we started to do that about 3 years ago. So our coverage of Parliament is really improved a lot. And we assess this by media monitoring. We read all stories in all print media, we watch online news to see what's being covered, what's being written about Parliament. And we actually assess whether they are negative or positive. If they are negative stories, then we try to find out why. Is it because we have a bad relationship, or is it because these journalists, they don't understand the issues that are under discussion? And then we try to put some mitigatory measures to it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for the question, Moses. Is there anyone else who would like to share based off of the reflections that have been, the questions that Moses has raised and what Mutai has mentioned? Please feel free to do so. And if not, I know I've asked a question on the chat, which I think would be very interesting to know if it's the same case as well, whereby, oh, sorry for that, where it's the same case in other countries where you've already identified which kinds of media personnel, whether it's both in print, TV, radio, and so on, who cover issues around parliamentary news. And also if you already have a category in terms of who covers what specific area, whether it's health, trade, agriculture, environment, and so on. So that would also help to know to what extent you've probably done this media landscape that Moses is saying and Siki is mentioning, that you need to know who these people are and need to really understand. And I think that's what will be covered more as well as we go into the next session. How do you know who these people are? And also I'll share it, I'll leave it to you, Grace. Over to you.
Thank you, Maggie. If you could move to the next slide. And as you're doing that, I can see we have more people who have joined. For the new people who just joined, please put your name in the chat and the organization that you're working for and your country, so that everybody else gets to know you. Then for this session, we're going to go through who is a journalist, although Moses has covered most of this. So this will be just like a recap to take us back to the basics. And I say take us back to the basics because in the wake of COVID-19, the media environment has changed. And this means even the relationships that you've had with the media, even those have changed and things will be done differently, like Moses mentioned, in the wake of COVID-19. So you find that for most people, they refer to people who work in the media by the general term of journalist or reporter, even if, like most of you know, and even with the media that you work with, that there are various roles in the media. And we find that if we go through the definitions of the different people that we can deal with and that you work with in the media, the first is the editor. This is where the power lies, especially like in established media houses. The editor is the one who selects the stories to be covered. They decide where the stories will be placed, if it's like a newspaper, or they decide which story will appear in prime time, if it's on television, or which sound bites will be used if it's on radio. They also decide which photos will be used, and they also write headlines. So this is where the power lies. And like Moses said, it's good to establish relationships with the foot soldiers. These are the people who work beneath the editors, and these are usually the journalists and the reporters. Then we have the columnists. These are people who give opinion on accurate information that has been provided, and for them the rule of impartiality does not apply because they're able to give their opinion on the information that they have presented. For the journalist and the reporter, these are actually the foot soldiers who work under the editor, and for the journalists, they gather information on facts and they present them in a style that's easy to consume for the public. And that presentation could be in the newspaper, it could be on TV in the news or on radio, and it could even be on social media. You find for the reporter, the slight difference between the reporter and the journalist is that the reporter reports real time. So they gather information, and this is where you find they do live interviews. Maggie, I've lost the, but it's okay. I've lost the presentation. If you could put it back, please. So reporters do live interviews, and this could be at press conferences, it could be at media events, it could be even live interviews. And they present this information and facts to the public directly and in real time. So I'd like to pose a question to all of us. Are there others that we can think of? Moses had mentioned some of them. Anybody who'd like to take that? We're all very quiet. I'm tempted to ask all of us to put on our videos so that we ensure that you're there, because we feel like we're talking to ourselves. Could you kindly all please put on your videos so that we know you're there with us and that we are not engaging with without you being there? Please put on your videos, as Maureen had mentioned earlier. Thank you very much. Thank you, Agnes. Thank you, Neo. Thank you, Moses. Thank you, Daryl, Tambudzai. Please let's put on our videos. Thank you, Kunga. Oh, that's better. It's better when we're seeing you. At least we know we are interacting with people. Thank you. Please let's go on putting on our videos. I'm just trying to go to the view. Okay, Maggie, you'll check for me who else has not put on their video. Please put on your videos. Elna, I've seen your message. You're having issues with connectivity. That's fine. But please, for everybody else, please put on your videos, and I'd kindly request you to leave them on so that we have a better interaction between us. So I was going through who are the other people who are key in the media landscape that we need to interact with, especially now in the wake of COVID-19. We find that the traditional and the older media channels, which were so common and were mainly used, now they're sort of fading. So you find that nowadays that people are dealing more with bloggers and social media influencers. And I don't know if this is something, is a way that you have started to use in your parliaments, where you find yourselves dealing more with social media influencers and bloggers.
It's fine.
Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Diana, I've seen your comment that you don't have a webcam. Thank you for that comment. For everybody else, please put on your videos so that we have a better interaction. Maggie, please move to the next slide. Okay. So when we go back to the basics of creating relationships with people in the media, the thing we need to remember and to go back to is that media people are people first. So anybody that we are forming a relationship with in the media or building that relationship, let's always remember that people are people, media people are people first, and it doesn't matter who they are. Sorry, Maggie, I think we skipped a slide. Just go back to the previous one. Okay, yes. So media people are people first. I want us to do an activity. And for this once, during this session, you're allowed to use your phone. So I'd like you to go to your phone book and just scroll through. And in the chat, let me know, and this is especially for those of you who work with media on a regular basis, let me know how many media people you have in your phone book right now, that you can pick up the phone right now and speak to them and ask them to publish your piece, whether it's a soundbite or to attend a press conference or an event or to use your press release or to give you coverage. Meaning that whatever it is that you share with them, they will give you coverage. So I'll give you 2 minutes, just go through your phone book and then type in the chat how many people you have found in your phone book in the media that you can call up right now and give them your piece, and they will publish it and give you coverage. So 2 minutes. Just type in the chat a number, whether it's 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, someone that you can call right now. Let's go to the chat, look through your phone book, and let's see whether you have people that you can call up in the media right now. Oh, Elna, that's interesting. 6, that's a very good number. You must tell us your secrets. Let's continue to put the numbers in the chat. How many people can you call up as you scroll through your phone book? Wow, Kunga 10. And these should be people that you can call now. You're on first name basis, and you can ask them to publish your piece and to give you coverage. Let's keep putting the numbers in the chat. Bogani 5, Diana 5. Those are very good numbers. Let's keep putting the numbers in the chat. Nomesh 3, that's good. Kupela 3, that's good. Let's keep putting the numbers. People you can call right now, you're on first name basis, and you can send them your piece for them to publish in the media for you. Keep the numbers coming. Haja 6, these are very good numbers. Let's keep putting the numbers. Tambudzai, you said you deal a lot with media. Put in your numbers, please. Noah says we have a parliamentary WhatsApp group. We have 120 journalists and we interact with them on a daily basis. 120 is a very good number. Keep putting your numbers. Anybody else who wants to tell us who they have on their phone book that they can call up right now? They're on first name basis and they can publish your piece. Okay, just keep putting up the numbers. We'll go on with the slides. Maggie, you can move to the next slide. We can keep putting the numbers as we go along. Linda Manyemba has put in 5. Maggie, please move to the next slide. These are very good numbers. So what these numbers show is that you actually do have concrete and stable relationships with people in the media. Mutare has put in 12 editors and 109 reporters. These are very good numbers. I'm very impressed. So if we keep going back to the basics, I'm sure with the numbers that you've put in there, you first identified the journalists and the editors, and they're based on your area of interest, whether it's SRHR, politics, health, trade, or education. And then I'm sure you went further ahead and found out which media houses are in your area and who are the media people that work in those media houses. And then are they freelance? What channels do they use? Are they TV journalists, or are they radio or newspaper? And of course, nowadays, do they engage in social media? And then like any other relationship, you have to create a connection with the people in the media. This is a must. You must cultivate a relationship with them, and your aim for cultivating the relationship should be long-term. So it's not so that they can put forward your agenda. It should be created so that you view it with a long-term basis. Then you find out who they are. Who are they really? These numbers that you've put in the chat, do you know those people? Do you really know them? Do you know where they're from? Do you know what makes them tick? Do you know what they like? And Moses had mentioned some of this in his session. Do you first see them as people before presenting your agenda to them? Are you reliable when it comes to working with them? Do you keep your word? And then we should always ask ourselves, what value are we adding to them? What is in it for them? And that's a basic human factor. What is in it for them? Even as you're approaching them with your media item, what is in it for them? What are they getting? What value are you adding? So now I'd like us to watch a short clip. Maggie, you can take us to the clip. And then after we watch the clip, Moses will take us through the next part of this session. Maggie, you can go to the clip now. Agnes,
Grace, can you see the screen properly?
Yes, I can see it. Go on.
Okay.
Okay, so let me share the screen, my screen for you to see. Maureen, maybe you can stop sharing the screen, then I can share the screen.
As you're doing that, Agnes says they have contacts, direct contact for 2 TV journalists for immediate calls, and mostly they depend on the 15 parliamentary desk officers to share press releases and other information with their media houses. Thank you, Agnes. We can go to the video now, Maggie. Over to you. We can't hear Maggie. You may have to start again.
Is it?
Okay, I can't hear it on my end.
Maggie, there's no sound.
You can't hear?
No, we can't
Can
hear.
you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't hear the video.
Okay. Let me just try this again. Okay. Let me try one again. I can. Can you hear? Was it better now?
Maggie, we can't hear the video. I can help with the sharing screen. Grace, are you able to hear when I was sharing?
You can try yours, Maureen. Maybe
okay.
Maggie, stop sharing. Okay.
All right. Just a minute. Can we all hear anything?
No, we can't hear Maureen.
Okay.
Okay, let me try mine, Maureen.
All right.
If you stop sharing, I can try mine. Can you hear?
Grace,
can you
we
hear?
might come back to this. We can't hear the video still.
Okay. Maybe we can just share the link and people can watch it later. So we can do the next session. Maggie, over to you. Moses will take us through the next session.
Okay. So sorry about that. We can share the link here and then we can, definitely get back to it. So Moses, over to you, how to build and maintain, and I think you'd already touched on this, but how to build and maintain trust between journalists and parliaments. So you had some guiding questions that you wanted to share with the participants, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Moka. My view is that the short presentation that I did, I think has done justice to this one. But with your indulgence, I wanted to add a few things on the issue of the changing media landscape and the challenges and opportunities that this presents for journalists and for staff of parliament, including members of parliament. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Moses. You can go ahead.
We can.
Because I'm saying that the presentation that I did is actually what is now on the screen. I've already, gone through that. But I feel that, I was going to do something with Patterson, remember? And we're going to talk a bit about the changing media landscape and what challenges and opportunities actually are presented to Parliament and staff of Parliament and the media themselves.
Okay, great. So then in that case, we can just go ahead next to Florence. So thank you for that, Moses. We can go ahead to Florence Sipala for her session.
Thank you, Maggie. So I'm just going to build on what has been discussed previously. And one of the things that you need to look at is preparing for presentations. You know that when you're preparing for an interview, when you interact with the media, you always need to be prepared. You need to go for armed, because then that ensures that you are able to interact with them in a more meaningful way. Maybe if you could move to the next slide. So we're looking to see why you would want to engage with the media. Of course, you want to raise visibility on an issue. You would also want to, raise awareness, public awareness, because then if it's an issue that's been discussed in Parliament, you want to be sure that the public understands the issue and the discussion. You want to be sure that the public is appraised of why it's important and why they should buy into this conversation. Then you also want to raise attention on the issue, but also, again, to call for action, but also to galvanize for action. So in addition to engaging the public, you're also engaging other parliamentarians. And in the case of when you're working on a regional kind of policy, you also want to engage the other parliamentarians, the other policymakers in the other countries. So, for example, if you're doing something as a SADC bloc, that you then work together and get to arrive at the same place. Next slide, please. So, how do you prepare? I don't know how you prepare normally when you're thinking about interacting with the media. So, and it's interesting. We are very happy that you shared with us the information on which media outlets you engage with, the journalists you engage with. Yeah, it's always important to research the news outlet. So, for example, if a journalist calls you and they say, calling from the continent, and I want to do a story on X subject, you then, the continent is a new paper that just started through the COVID disruption. So you might not be very familiar with the continent. So you might want to read a bit about the continent. It's published by the Mail and Guardian, and so you already know about the Mail and Guardian, but you want to see, okay, what's different about it. So they publish shorter, snappy kind of pieces, and then they distribute this through WhatsApp. So the total disruption of the media distribution network. So already you can see that you're going to reach many more people in the African continent if you get to publish with them, because then the people, it's shared on social media, it's also shared on WhatsApp, as opposed to the mother paper, which then has a paywall on some of the articles that you might want to share. Also, you want to know what the journalist has covered before. So if you have an idea of how they address issues, you want to, even so that you can have something as an icebreaker. Maybe this time they are talking about they might be writing to you about a public policy on sexual and reproductive health and rights, but they have written something on NCDs previously. So it could be an opportunity for you to discuss what they published before, what you thought about the piece as an icebreaker, but it also helps for the person to know that you know their work. And, as again, we've always said that it's important to demonstrate to the journalists that you know their work and you respect their work. Then furthermore, you need to know what kind of deadlines they're working with. Because sometimes they have a very tight deadline, they have a very quick turnaround time. So you need to know what the turnaround time they are working with, so that you're able to ensure you respond to them by that time. So if someone has a deadline, it depends on what kind of story. So again, the media turnaround times are very quick. So you need to be aware of that and be prepared to respond as quickly as you can. So that's why it's always good to have to prepare what you would want to say on an issue. So for example, we're talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights. So if the journalist calls you and says they want to talk to you about teenage pregnancies, for example, you should be able to know that these are the three things. This is the key message I would like to say on this issue. And if from these three key message, I would like to break it down, and they can break it down into issue 1, 2, and 3. And and even those 3 issues, you can then still break it down into another 3. So always think of it as in multiples of 3, but always think about how you can summarize your key messages, your key ideas in three key points, so that you don't have to even read them. You already know these are the, you have a way of cueing yourself to know what you'd like to say. But also it's important to have your facts and figures at hand. So which is why also it's important to then always do research, and that and one of the things that SIPC helps with is that rapid response service, because then if you don't have the facts and figures, then you could tap into that service and get the information that you might need. But also ensuring that you keep abreast with what's happening on an issue that is of an issue that's topical. So that's why also it's very important to keep reading the news and also having an idea of what are the big issues at the time. So for example, during the pandemic, there might be people asking what kind of impact the pandemic has had on SRHR services, for example, and that would be are people able to access reproductive health products and the commodities and things and the services. The curfews, were the curfews making an impact on people's ability to access the hospitals or the facilities, things like that. Also, you need to think about how to ensure that your message is short and catchy, because then you want to be sure that you keep the attention of the public, and particularly when you're thinking about broadcast. So you're always told, think about how to ensure that you have sound bites, because you'll have the broadcast media has very very short time to tell a story. So maybe a few seconds here or there. So ensure that you're able to give your message in a short, and a catchy sound bites. So prepare those sound bites, practice them. Try and ensure you're not using jargon, and also talk to people. And sometimes you might find that you speak a lot in jargon because of stuff you work on every day. But then when you talk to people who are outside of that circle of your area of expertise, then they might let you know that you missed something here. And then also when you're thinking about TV or multimedia content, because a lot of, particularly during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of the key big media houses, the international media houses, doing a lot of stories, a lot of interviews on multimedia platforms. So they are on Instagram, they are on Facebook. So you also need to think about what visual you can provide for the story that you're doing. That is that's visual. So for example, if you're talking about, so if you're having a meeting to discuss SRHR issues, then you would be all meeting in a room, but then you might have, the journalists might pick get some visuals from there, but they might need additional footage, what sometimes people talk of as B-roll, to illustrate their story. So for example, if you're talking about access to maternal health services, then it might be helpful to then link them up with a maternity facility for them to be able to get the footage from that facility. And so when you facilitate that process, you help them then package their story and get it out as faster. Maggie, please move to the next slide. So again, you also have to think, going back to the key messages, I gave an example here on the right to food, where this is in the Kenyan context, but it's still, the right to food is an ECOSOC right, economic and social-cultural rights, that is captured in international instruments, but also in Kenya we have domesticated it and it's captured in our constitution. But also it's, so thinking about it in 3 kind of bullet points, you're like, the right to food is a constitutional right because it's covered in our constitution, but it's also the right to food is the right to feed oneself in dignity. So you shouldn't have to go and look in a dustbin or wherever to find food. You should, or to have to steal food. You should be able to access food in a way that preserves the person's dignity. But also, we need to have a proper implementing a proper mechanism for implementing the right to food, because then at the moment, at least in the Kenyan context, it's not yet there, so that we can be able to track and to track the progress and of course enhance the accountability. So you could think like that of whatever issue you're looking at, what are the 3 key things that you want to talk about and how would you illustrate them? Thanks, Maggie. We can move to the next one. So now we are going to have a media interaction session. So we'd like to have a conversation with all of you, and Siki and Maureen will pick up from here.
Thank you, Florence.
Questions and yeah, thanks.
Maggie, so the next session is supposed to be very practical. We are going to have role play, and we will play in, we'll play in 3 teams. There will be the role of a journalist. There will be the role, there'll be a representative of the government, and there will be a representative from the parent side.
Mm.
The topic of discussion will be teenage pregnancies.
Mm.
Maggie, I'm not sure if we can pull up the case study, please.
Yes, and I'll share as well the case study in French, and in Portuguese, the links on the chat as we see the English one.
Great.
Yeah. So let me just pull up the case study. 1 minute. Okay. Sorry, I have very many. I'm getting the French. So on the chat for all the French speakers, I've just shared with you the link to the French case study. So as we read the English one, please just look at that. And then the next link I'm going to share is the case study in Portuguese. So please let us know if you're able to access them so that, okay, so in case you're not able to access them, please let me know so that I can make sure I open up all the sharing rights to you. Okay, and then Maureen, I'm just sharing the English case study so you can go through it. There. I hope you can see the screen, Maureen. Can you see the screen? Oh, you're on mute, just in case.
Sorry. Yes, we can on the screen. Thanks, Maggie. If we can all take a minute to go through the paragraph. It's a brief one so that we can all be on the same page. We can have about 2 to 3 minutes to go through each. I want to know if our colleagues using the other languages, Portuguese and French, are able to access their documents as well, and that they will be going through them as well. You can give me a thumbs up if you're able to do so, or you can just reply in the chat and say yes. Yes. Maggie?
Yeah. So
Julie Diana says they cannot access the link.
Okay, so I'm just working on it. You should have the access right now. So I've just accepted. And this is also the English link for those who want to also just open for themselves and see the English link.
Elna also says Please update the sharing settings, Maggie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the settings are on, so you should all be able to access it.
I hope we are all able to access it now. Everyone?
What about the access code?
It should be okay now.
Great, so everyone has access now. So 2 more minutes to quickly read through. Are we almost done? Daryl is asking, how do we get the access code? Maggie, is any document locked? None. Daryl,
No.
maybe you can try again. There is no document that has been locked.
But the thing is, with my browser, do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
With my browser, I'm not logged in with the same email address as I'm logged in with my Zoom. So what I think is happening is, due to the different email address, it's not allowing me to access the file. So I have to request for the code, which I have done, and I'm yet to.
Okay, if you have, then I can accept it. If there's an issue on your end, then let me just check. If you send me an email.
I think I've seen an email coming in. I'll try and access again.
Is everyone else okay? Can we move on to the next step?
It's working now.
All right, so let's move on. I'm sure you've all read the case study, and you see we have 3 roles here. We have a journalist who's interested in your views. Your views, 1 as a parent, and your views 2 as a government representative. So we have 2 sides here. We have the side of the government represented, we have a journalist represented, and then we have a parent represented. So at this point, I'll ask that actually we volunteer 2 participants who will take up either role. I need 1 to take the option of government representative and another to take the role of a parent. Maggie, are our colleagues in the other languages able to follow the discussion?
Yes, they should be able to follow the discussion. And if we need, they can also participate, because we have somebody who can translate from French to Portuguese as well. So that's okay. So
Okay, great. So any volunteers from our 42 participants, minus how many? Minus about 5 panelists. I promise you this will be a very engaging session and a good opportunity to actually put yourself in either shoes. I'm assuming all of us here work with the government, but unless you get to feel how a journalist feels in some of these situations, then you can't be fully prepared. So you really need to appreciate the different dynamics from the different groups represented. And that is what makes you better equipped to deal with journalists. Anyone? Raise your hand. Or I might just forcefully pick someone to participate, which I really don't want to do. I would like to think this is a democracy, at least in this context. All right.
I can see the videos are off. I don't know what most people turned off their videos again. So if you could also
please
turn
come
on
back
your
on
video.
camera. Stop running away. Please come back. This is how we learn.
Any volunteers? At least for the role of a government representative.
Which is the easy one, actually. All right. There are very few of us on video. Are the rest of us not able to come on? Okay, so I'll volunteer someone since since no one is willing to take this up. Assume this is an ambush by journalists, and then apply the tips that Moses spoke about earlier, and Florence as well. So I'll pick a lady and a gent. Linda, you've been most persistent on screen. Thank you very much. So I'll volunteer you for the role of a parent. Thank you very much. Someone says we don't have a webcam on our computer. Sorry. Okay, that's fine. Where are the gentlemen? Maggie, do we have any gentlemen here?
Daryl, I know his camera is not clear, but Daryl is.
Daryl, but we need to be able to see everyone in character, because guys, think of this as sort of a play. We have to see everyone in character and also take record of your facial expressions as the journalist asks some possibly sensitive questions that you'll not be happy about. Okay, Daryl, you've been overwhelmingly volunteered. Daryl, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. All right. So we will assume in this particular interview that you had poor connection, so the journalist had to speak to you on voice.
So I'm participating.
Sorry.
So I'm participating in the role play.
Oh, great. Thank you. So you play the role of a parent.
No,
yes.
No, I'm asking.
Uh-huh.
Who's participating? Who's participating?
Linda and you.
Okay, bring it on.
Yeah. Okay. So you from the paragraph, you're playing the role of a parent. Linda will take the role of government representative, and Siki will be our journalist for the day. Siki, fire away.
Okay. So my first question is to the government representative. Do you think the government has failed in its responsibility to protect young schoolgirls from teenage pregnancies? I'll need our government representative to unmute the microphone.
Linda, unmute. Linda, please unmute. We can't hear you.
The host can unmute her.
Yes,
okay.
Please. Oh, she's back.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry about the technical hitch. I don't think the government has failed, but maybe I'll put back the question to the person who had asked it. What are you saying? I am going to answer on behalf of the government.
Yes.
Yes. You imagine you're representing your government. Okay, this is very hypothetical. This is just a case scenario. So here you imagine you're representing your government, for instance, and then respond to the question as you would in an actual interview with the media.
Okay. Can she repeat the question again?
Sure. The question was, do you think the government has failed in its responsibility to protect young schoolgirls from teenage pregnancies?
I don't think the government has failed, because the government has been doing programs to educate the teenagers against pregnancy. The government has also been doing some roadshows through their journalists. The media was covering events that were being done by children, even during the day of the girl child. They were all educated about the bad side of getting pregnant when you are still a teenager. They were also told by health officials why they should wait for the right age when they are mature enough to get pregnant.
Thank you so much, Linda, for a great answer. And now I'd like to move on to our parents' representative. Daryl, what role should parents be playing in the fight against teenage pregnancies? As a parent, what do you think about that?
I think parents should be proactive in educating the child with regards to sexuality, starting at a very young age. I think this is one of the things that we tend not to do, because like in our country, it's sort of a taboo to talk about sexuality as it should be speak of. That's what I think.
Thank you, Daryl. And I'd actually like to turn the conversation back to Linda, who mentioned some of the government's initiatives. Would comprehensive sexuality education play a part in reducing the number of teenagers who get pregnant? Is that a stance the government believes in?
Sorry, Ayedeko, I'm sorry about that. You said?
I said, would comprehensive sexuality education play a part in reducing the number of teenagers who get pregnant?
Yes, I think so. Because when children are being educated about not getting pregnant, some of them, not all of them, some of them, when they hear that thing being repeated over and over again, it actually gets to them. And they will know, when they get proper education, they will know that they should avoid that.
Thank you, Linda. And Daryl, as a parent, are you in agreement with the government's stance on CSE, or do you believe that it is hindering and exposing young girls maybe perhaps too early in their lives?
I think they lacking in what they're doing. In terms of really talking in the language that they need to talk, due to not being bashed by people that are closed-minded on the topic, or or even just the fact that they wouldn't want to be held liable to whoever doesn't understand what they're doing. From like, let's say I'm trying to search for the word. Parents that doesn't really understand the logic and the importance of being proactive towards such topics. That's my take on it.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. Thank you so much, Daryl. I'll revert the conversation back to Maureen now to give us a few of her insights and perhaps even the wider group, what your thoughts were in regards to how some of these questions were answered. Moses, even a critique from you would be great for both Daryl and Linda in their different capacities as parents and government representatives.
Thank you, Siki, and thanks, Daryl and Linda. Grace, I'm just wondering if we might have 5 more minutes for another set of our participants to.
Yes, we do, Maggie. I mean, we do, Maureen. You can go ahead. We can do another round.
Great.
Yes,
because we need to. Our respondents were very calm. You know, Linda, as a government representative, you were very calm, and Daryl, as a parent as well. We need something different so that we can critique properly. So, Mutare, you've also been very consistent on our screen. So thank you very much. You're next. And who else? Kupela, would you like to take the next role?
For which role?
You will play the parent. Mutare will play the government. And then Moses, I would like to volunteer you to fire some questions here as a journalist this time round, to push some buttons.
And Maureen, there's a comment in the chat. If we can choose the government representative to be Kurasha.
Okay, give the government rep to Kurasha. All right.
Thanks.
Is Kurasha on screen? Kurasha, hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I can see you.
I have no problem being a government representative, but I caught you at the tail end. I'm coming from another process and I joined just to get a feel. So please pardon me for that. Grace and Moses know that I would be a government official par excellence, but
can I brief you?
Kurasha, we are not going to let you off the hook because some of these interviews are impromptu. So please take it on. You can do this. Over.
For some background, Kurasha.
Yes.
We had a case study. Maggie, are you able to pull up the case study for Kurasha?
Yes, just highlights. I'll be fine.
Yes. So the issue here is teenage pregnancies, and we have journalists. We are role playing. We have 3 roles here. We have a journalist who we volunteered as Moses. We have a government representative, and then we have a parent.
Okay.
Yes. And what the journalist is interested in is your views on how to address teenage pregnancies during the COVID-19 pandemic.
No, that's fine. I'm okay.
Yes. Good. That was easy. So Moses.
Okay.
You go now.
Mr. Kurasha, thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule. As a government official, do you think the government has failed in its responsibility to protect young schoolgirls from teenage pregnancies?
Thank you very much, Moses. Failing, this government has not failed. You may need to revisit the facts, Moses. Our government has actually been leading the pack. We have just come out of a meeting, a regional meeting, where we were giving full support, lending our full weight to the development of the SADC model law on eradicating child marriages. And we even have just concluded 2 months ago a meeting for the African Union where we were discussing the same matter as a region because we realize that we need common solutions to this problem. So in the end, what we need to do, we need to realize that solutions lie with the communities because these girls are coming from homes. They are not in government offices. So we need to work together as a collective rather than just the government. Because even if we were to outlaw teenage pregnancies, the law is not a panacea. It takes the parents, it takes communities, it takes civil society, and you, the media, in sending the message around in terms of why teenage pregnancies are bad and are doing a disservice to the future of young girls.
Mr. Grasha, would you think that comprehensive sexuality education can play a part in reducing the number of teenagers who get pregnant?
Information is empowering. Prevention is better than cure. There's no two ways. You empower these young girls by giving them adequate information. So we are in it there's no iota of doubt that my government has been fully supportive of provision of comprehensive sexuality education.
What role do you see parents playing?
Parents, as I said earlier, government can only do so much. These girls are coming from homes, and that puts the parents at the center. When we talk about education, the first line of education that kids get is from the parents. So the parents actually play a central role if we must win this war against child pregnancies.
Thank you very much for your time, government official.
Most welcome. Thank you.
All right. Moses, we had a parent role as well.
Yes, who is the parent?
Please remind me who did I allocate the parent? Is it you, Kupela? Yeah.
It's Kupela.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not clear. Are you going to ask me the questions or am I reporting to a journalist?
No, I'm asking you questions in your capacity as a parent. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm very ready. I have three girls.
You have three girls. Do you think that the government has failed in its responsibility to protect young school girls from teenage pregnancies? As a parent, do you think government is doing enough?
The government is not doing enough. You know, these days there's moral decay and the children are just being allowed to do whatever they want. We're supposed to be sending them to school so that they can learn how to gain skills. Instead, they are coming back with pregnancies. So I think the government and the institutions who are supposed to be protecting the children are the same ones that are introducing them to these foreign concepts. So for me as a parent, I'm very worried and I'm very concerned the government is not doing enough. And when our children are falling pregnant, we are, as parents, we're the ones now who have to become grandparents before our time. It's unacceptable.
Do you think comprehensive sexuality education can play a part in reducing the number of teenagers who get pregnant?
Isn't that the same thing that's causing the pregnancies? Because why should children be learning about certain things before their time? Maybe if they never knew about these things, they wouldn't be partaking in such vices. There's obviously too much freedom for them, and maybe it's better if they just stay at home and then we can raise them ourselves if the government is failing.
You have indicated that you are a mother of three girls. As a parent, what role are you playing in preventing teenage pregnancies, and what do you think other parents like you can do?
I think it's very important for the children just to stay in the home. And I can keep a closer eye on them, and then maybe we trust them more with the church and we can become a little bit more involved, because it's almost as if all these hours that they spend outside the home, I'm thinking they're going to school, I'm thinking that they are being looked after. But in actual fact, other things are happening where the results are becoming very visible.
Thank you very much for your time, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Kupela and Kurasha. That's the typical dynamic of an interview with a journalist. When two people hold dearly to either perspective. Kupela here is very strongly against CSE. She says it's giving kids information about sex. Well, they're not ready for it yet. She prefers that the girls should stay in church, get more involved there. Kurasha, on the other hand, is saying information is power. So definitely his government is in support of getting this kind of information to kids in school. I would like to hear your thoughts on how the 4 interviews came out to you. Did you pick out anything? Some of the pointers that were discussed by Moses and by Florence early in the presentations. Like, was someone very prepared and very ready to defend their stand? Did someone come with their points in hand and not allowing the journalists to take them off the course or their train of thought? I'd like to hear your thoughts, please. You can unmute your mic and speak.
Agnes, I can see your hand is raised.
My take on this is that both the government and the parents were too defensive. No one was willing to take responsibility.
Was this for the first or the second group? Both?
Both.
Okay.
They are not willing to take responsibility. They are too defensive, and that's how we are ending up with these problems, because no one wants to take responsibility of educating or doing something about teenage pregnancies. The government is blaming the parents are blaming government. So the children are in between, and now they don't know who is for them, who is willing to educate them, because it's a blame game and we are not solving the problem.
Thank you, Agnes. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm going to say this. Maybe we need to, first of all, I like the way that Kurasha and the parent that I interviewed responded to the questions. But having said that, we need to keep these questions until we also get an opportunity to actually do a session with the journalists, because we're looking at the questions that were being put to the parents, being put to the government official. This is largely an example of how not to ask questions to any official or to any parent. Because if you look at the questions 1 and 2, and question 4 and 5 require yes or no questions. So we're very lucky that Kurasha and the other parent actually went beyond that and were elaborate in their responses. But nothing would have stopped them from saying no. If you look at question number 1, let me see if I can quickly open it here.
Do you think government has failed?
Yes. Yeah. Do you think government has failed in its responsibility to protect young girls from teenage pregnancies? It is sufficient to say yes or no. And if the journalist does not do a follow-up question, you don't get much, you don't yield much, from that. Would comprehensive sexuality education play a part in reducing the number of teenagers who get pregnant? Again, anybody can get away by saying yes or no. I'm happy with what role do you think parents can play? Are parents doing enough to equip their children with the right information to tackle this issue? Again, the person being interviewed can get away by saying yes or no. So this is an example, again, of how we can think of how to empower journalists when they get to people who hold information. A very busy person like Kurasha, who's just coming out of another section and wants to rush into another section, you ask a question like that, you get one word answer and you go away without a story. So that's just my views on those questions. But the responses were generous, I think. People like Kurasha would tell you after the interview that, yeah, but you see, I did you a favor in actually giving you elaborate responses. Your questions were open and shut questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. Actually, to add to what Moses just said, we've had instances where journalists invite experts to interviews without having properly researched that field. And we've seen such interviews go take a left turn very quick, because an expert will feel like you're wasting my time, because if you are really invested in this topic, you should have taken your time to research. We've had a few examples in our own Kenyan media where people, different thought leaders in different fields, refuse to engage with the media because they feel like you're not doing your due diligence for a worthy conversation, worthy of a national platform. Yeah, I mean, and that could work two ways. I mean, as an expert, you can take advantage of that loophole and give them yes or no answers, like Moses just said, especially if it's a contentious issue. You can just get yourself out of it with very straightforward yes or no answers. Yeah, but then again, like he said, it's also an opportunity to, I mean, when you engage more directly with journalists, they also get to understand your work. That way they can just go beyond, the surface and actually bring up the issues that are more informative to the public. Thank you. Kurasha, you have your hand up, please go.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, let me confess, I nearly said to Moses, what do you think? But then, I didn't want to spoil the game because I had been volunteered. So I assumed there was a context and therefore I had to play along. But the first thing that occurred to me was that this journalist is not too sure whether even the question is worth asking, because the facts and the figures, but the basis on which you are approaching the government and say, what are you doing with all this? What is your government doing? And so when it didn't come out, I nearly said, so what do you think?
Thank you, Kurasha. That is a very practical and real life experience of how a live interview can go left. Yeah, any other thoughts on any of the two sets that we had in the different role playing?
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Is it okay to request for a journalist to send his questions first for you to prepare?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know, Florence spoke about this, right, Siki? She briefly covered this, but one of the ways to avoid being blindsided by a journalist, especially when you just don't want to speak and get misinterpreted, whether it's for a written article, whether it's for a live, a broadcast interview, when they get in touch with you, you can always ask them to inform you of the topic they want you to talk about, and also send the questions to you in advance so that you can also prepare properly for the interview, right? Though sometimes we have instances where you're sort of ambushed when you're not ready to engage with the media, and in that case, like Moses mentioned, you can tell the journalist, I will get back to you on Tuesday, but make sure, so that there's some goodwill that you're showing from your side, call them on Monday to tell them you asked about this, I have a response. It's also not a good reflection, like he said, to say no comment, because no comment often in the media is interpreted as you're definitely guilty. You just you just don't have, you don't want to say it outright. Yeah, Agnes, is that helpful? And one last thing, Florence mentioned that if you have your quick facts at hand or 3 areas of messaging, you can always use those as your defense line when ambushed. Yeah, it doesn't matter what question they ask, so long as it's within that sphere. Have your 3 areas of key messaging. Maybe the government stand is we are very much invested in CSC to help the young girls and boys get the relevant information they need on sexuality. You can have those thematic points of information, and if they need more, you can tell them, I will get back to you on that. Yeah. I hope I answered your question. All right, thank you.
And if I may, Chair, just to also point out that it's not just in the interest of the institution to have the questions in advance. It's also in the interest of the journalist if you want to get a good story. Because particularly when you're dealing with facts and figures, you know how organizations are structured sometimes in terms of how information is processed. If you are working in a typical parliament, you'll be lucky if the clerk knows all the facts at the end. You may need to check with the journals, you may need to check with procedures, you may need to talk to the lawyers, and as a result, it's always better to have the questions in advance, even though you may pose the follow-up questions, but it serves everyone if the questions are known in advance. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kurasha. Anyone else with an addition before we move to the next session? Linda, do you want to say something?
I have nothing to say.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for your active participation. Maggie, over to you. Siki, did you have anything to add? Sorry.
No, I think everything has been covered succinctly. So I'm happy to move on. Maggie, please go ahead.
Great. Okay. So the next session would be what has not worked. Yes. So what has not worked?
Yeah, looks like that's my session as well. Sometimes from the slide you can see, sometimes you have the right answer, but for the wrong problem, which is what this gentleman is trying to do here, fitting a square in a circle. So moving on, Maggie, to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So in this session, we will go into breakout rooms. Maggie, I'm sure we have arrangements for that.
Yes, yes, we do. Let me stop sharing my screen for a few minutes. And then, yes, so Ronald, you can assist us here with the breakout sessions.
Okay, but just before he does that,
I'll share as well on the chat the breakout session, the translated ones in French and in Portuguese as well.
All right, so before we go into the breakout rooms, for the next 15 minutes, go to this slide with the questions, Maggie. We will go into groups. The groups will be 3. We will have a group for the English speakers, the French speakers, and the Portuguese speakers. And in the Google Doc that Maggie will paste in the chat. Maggie, are you able to paste the link to the Google Doc and update the access? Okay, yeah. Great. We will go into those documents in the different languages, and then you will answer the 4 questions on your screen. The first one is, how do you currently engage with the media? And in this case, we're talking about editors or journalists. You can tell us if you have specific people you prefer to engage with and for this specific reason. Or you will also tell us, we prefer to engage the broadcast journalists over the print journalists, that kind of information. We also want to know about what approaches have been successful so far in your engagement with the media. Of course, you've had instances where you've successfully worked with the media. We want to know what happened in those cases, or how you did it. And then the third question is, what have been your biggest challenges in working with media to address SRHR? I know you will have a lot of answers for that one. And then the last one is in terms of support. What skills or support do you need to navigate the challenges in number 3? You can tell us what is your point of need, that if X happened, you'd be able to do Y better. Or if you had Y skills, you would do Z better. Yes, that is all. Ronald can proceed and break the different teams into the rooms. And we will come back in 10 minutes. And coming back in 10 minutes, you can actually take down your responses in terms of points. When we come back after 10 minutes, please come back having appointed your team lead, who will speak briefly on what you discussed in the breakout session. Are we good? Please give me a thumbs up. Anyone? Okay, Maggie, over to Ronald.
Ronald, are you here? Let's see if my co-host. Okay. So I can see, I'm not sure if he's here in the call. So maybe we can just go ahead and start answering the questions via plenary as we get to see if Ronald will, as we get to figure out the breakout rooms.
Okay, as that happens, maybe we can start having the conversation around this. And we will start with the first question. Who do you currently engage with in the media? I will take answers on video, on audio, on chat. Feel free to share your inputs. You can also unmute or raise your hand and you'll be able to give your contribution.
We haven't had any Portuguese speaking or French speaking participant participate. So maybe we can also try and see, we can pick up on your names. And I know some of you had mentioned that you don't have webcams, but in this case, you don't really need the webcam. You can just, just share with us. So I can see here on my screen, and I'm going to just pick at random names. I have Noah. I have Haja. So maybe Noah or Haja, could you unmute? And Diademe as well.
Good afternoon. The name is Kutala. And
Kutala. Yes. Thank you.
I represent Parliament of South Africa. Who do you currently engage with in the media? All right. COVID-19 has presented an opportunity wherein we needed to be innovative We are currently working from home, and we've recently started with hybrid sessions, wherein some members log on virtually and the others are physically present within the precinct. In order then to ensure that there is a communication flow, we collapsed all WhatsApp groups that we had, and we have one parliamentary communication WhatsApp group. In that parliamentary WhatsApp group, you've got almost, in fact, you've got all journalists, political journalists that have a keen interest in the work of Parliament. So daily we share links with them so that they can be observers in the parliamentary committees. When there is a house sitting like there is today, wherein the deputy president of the country is answering questions, an oral question and answer session in the National Assembly. Therefore, we, members of the media, follow the proceedings through the parliamentary TV, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. So our interaction with journalists is on a daily basis, giving them links so that they can access the work of Parliament and any other information that they require from us. So the past few months have been hectic. One thing about COVID, it has blurred the working hours. Some committee meetings take place late at night, and therefore, as foot soldiers, we are required to be of assistance to those committees. So that's how we interact with the media in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kutala. Did I get your name right? I'm sorry if I mispronounced
Correct.
it.
Yes. No, it's okay.
Yeah, and that's a very exhaustive response as to the different avenues and the opportunities that are there to engage with the media. Anyone else with input? Linda says they engage both journalists and editors. Linda, maybe you can tell us how exactly you do that? Do you give them a call? Do you have a contact list of these people? Is it an on and off kind of thing? Do you call them when you need?
No, not exactly calling them off. We normally hold media relations workshops with them so that we get to know them more. Like now, we do the media awards where we award the best reporter. We've also created a WhatsApp group, like Mutare was saying, and we keep the media up to date with what is happening to Parliament. We encourage them to take our Parliament, any social media page pertaining to parliamentary issues. We invite them to committee meetings. Like now, it's just unfortunate that we are putting fewer people in the committee rooms, but we share with them the links for the virtual meetings.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. I'm getting that your engagement with the journalist is continuous. It's not...
yeah, it's continuous.
Yeah, which is a good thing. It's one way to sustain relationships. So I see we've combined the first and the second question. So we move on to the third. What have been your biggest challenges in working with the media to address SRHR? Challenges, please type in the chat box. Please remember to come back on video. Yeah, you can also raise your hand. Linda, your hand is up. Would you like to say something?
Yes, it's up.
Okay. Okay.
Our biggest challenge with the media is that at times, like now, when fewer people are needed, at times we have workshops whereby the donor would have told us that we only need 2 people. to journalists. So they have a problem when they now want to share the picture that they would have taken and the stories. So we made them to form a media journalist committee, whereby when such situations appear, they are supposed to make sure that their representative is able to give them pictures to share with them, even the videos to share with them. But now, knowing that journalists will be in a position that some say our cameras have got very high resolution, so I can't share that picture with you, and some would have already put their name on the picture already. That's when they start fighting. So we end up as if we are now selecting the journalists who cover our stories when we want, they say you select this one because she also gives you pictures or what. Like we end up like we are not being fair with them. Are you getting me?
I am.
You
I
end
am,
up
Linda.
like you are choosing. Yeah, you are choosing the other over the other, just because of lack of those resources. At times it will be beyond our control. Like now, the era of COVID-19. Like today, we had the State of the Nation address. It was being held virtually, with the president addressing from the State House, but Parliament was in session in both houses, in the Senate and in the National Assembly. So some journalists wanted to actually go inside the National Assembly. Whilst we can't put all of them there, everybody would want to be on spotlight, especially on big events like these ones. So we need to continuously engage them so that they understand what will be happening.
Thank you, Linda. You stated a challenge there and also gave us a solution in the same breath. Yeah. Thank you, but yeah, true. You need to appear, so to speak, fair, and I mean, accord different people different opportunities to help with the engagement. Anyone else with input? Agnes? You're on mute, Agnes. You're on mute.
I was at the copy, I had stepped out.
Okay. We are talking about the biggest challenges in working with the media to address SRHR.
To address what?
SRHR.
What is SRHR?
Oh, sexual reproductive health and rights. Yes.
Oh, okay. You know, the media, there's a perception that all media people support these sexual reproductive health rights. And their questions are mostly when they receive an answer which is not in affirmative of what they want to hear, they tend to be more misquoting. They will always misquote if they didn't get the answer they were looking for. So that's the problem with the media that we have picked up of late. Because when they are posing a question, they always want to dictate kind of the responses that they will hear. When they hear a politician talking in the negative, for them it's like, but say, where have you been? Have you not been following on how far we are with this issue? So that way they provoke politicians by the comments they make when they are seeking some answers to some of the questions they might be posing. They don't appear to be listening, but more of suggestive in the kind of responses that they want to hear.
Thank you, Agnes. And that goes back to building a trusting environment between journalists and politicians and experts, because no one will engage with the media when their biggest fear is getting misquoted. They would rather stay away than engage. But then again, I believe there are journalists who are actually known for their credibility speaking to certain matters. And like Florence said, sometimes due diligence is very important. It will help you know what kind of journalist you're dealing with or what kind of outlet. And if there are people who are known for, there's something we call gutter press, people who will run with anything. Anything is a headline. So thanks, Agnes. Unfortunately, we are running out of time and we have one last session. So, I mean, you can think on some of these questions and send back your inputs. The questions are still on chat, so you can always copy them and reflect on them in your different countries and share with us. It will also inform us better on how to move forward with the training. So at this point, I'll hand over to Maggie for what I think is our last session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your contributions and your inputs. So just to sort of wrap up what you've gone through for the last 3 hours, we would like you to do a short survey. Well, let me say survey, but not really survey. A short feedback to allow us as well to know what are some of the key things that you have taken away from this session. What are some of the things that you would like to see in other sessions, and for us also to be able to know how to best improve for upcoming sessions. So if you could kindly, on your phones, go to www.menti.com. I hope you can see the screen. And then once you are able to go to www.menti.com, then you can use the code that's up there, 8264720, and it will prompt you to be able to start answering the question. So in one word, how would you describe this session? So I'll be able to see how many people have responded. And once you respond, we'll also see some of the responses on the screen, but we won't see the name of the person who's responded. So it's anonymous, so we won't know. Yeah, just in case. So you can use your phone or your computer. Yeah. In any language, yes, exactly. Thank you, Grace. So we have about 4 minutes left for the session to end. So please, yes, log in and share. And if you have any challenges, just tell us so that we can let you, yeah, we can know. Okay, thank you. I can see at least the response is coming in. So I know we have about how many participants? 33 participants, so minus the facilitator. So we have, let's say, about 26 to 24 participants. So I'm expecting at least we can get to 10 responses, half of the participants. We need 7 more people, so we can go to the next. Okay, thank you, Diana, for sharing that on the chat. Thank you, Veronica, for sharing. So I can say at least we've got to 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I'll go to the next, and just keep sharing as well on the chat if you feel something has come up. So for the next one, sorry, yes. to what extent do you agree with these statements about the session? So I learned new things. You strongly agree or strongly disagree. I thought the presentation was interactive, and I thought the information was useful.
Maggie?
Yes.
Oh, great. People are voting. You can move the scale to either side. Towards your right, you strongly agree. Towards your left, you strongly disagree.
Yeah. So the higher the number, the more you agree with it, with the statement. So I see just one person has voted. And those on the chat, feel free to just share as well your feedback on the chat if you can't be able to access the Menti. So 1 more minute to finish this. Thank you. Oh, okay, 4 people have voted. Thank you so much. So I'll move to the next question. What could be different for the next session? What could be improved for perhaps? Yeah. If we were to have an for the next media training session, what are some of the improvements we could be able to make it more engaging and even more interactive? Remember, it's anonymous, so we don't know who is sharing the feedback, and your honest feedback is very important for us. Um, 30 seconds to hopefully get more people to respond. Okay, that's a very good suggestion. Okay, great. Okay, and I can see also Veronica has commented on the same about having 2 more participants from parliaments.
But you said it's anonymous.
No, she had chat. She typed on the chat. So for the Mentimeter, it's anonymous, but on the chat, it's not anonymous. Don't worry, Agnes. I wouldn't. I wouldn't know which one you shared. Okay, so 2 more. If we can get to 2 more, then we can go to the next one. Okay, so I'll just go to the next one because I can also see more are coming on the chat. Yes, thank you. Yeah, in terms of webcam, we'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you. Then, so what would be the ideal length of the session? Was 3 hours too long? Was it too short? Would you like it to, yeah. More time. So Patricia says more time. Okay. 3 hours is good. Okay. More time with breaks. Okay, that's very well noted. Okay. Okay, great. So probably incorporating more breaks would help. 4 hours, 3 hours with breaks. Okay. So thank you for that. So we can go to the next one. Would you recommend a similar training for the parliamentarians that you work with? So you can just say yes or no. Okay, 3 hours in the morning, that's noted. Okay. The evening, everyone is probably too tired or they've just come from a heavy lunch. So it might be hard to concentrate, so that's noted. And for senior, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so then I think we have one more to go. What other areas would you like covered? What other topics do you feel that we might have left out or you would like us to cover even more in depth when we're discussing issues around media training, interacting with media in different ways or forms, whether it's on TV, radio, social media, and so on? Okay, so I see social media might be, yeah, using social media, okay. Oh, use of data, okay, that's very, okay, great, great. A few more seconds, sorry. Social media. So social media is a popular one, and I think use of data is also very important. So that's very much noted. So because of time, I'll go to the next one. I think we're actually done. Yes, I think we're done. So I think that's it. So thank you so much. This has been very helpful. I like the feedback, and I think that we're definitely going to incorporate this in the next upcoming training sessions. So I'd like to hand it over to Grace, but I think from my end, thank you very much for your participation, for carving time in your busy schedules to be with us for these 3 hours. And we hope that we'll keep this going and keep building the momentum on this. So over to you, Grace.
Thank you, Maggie. And first, to echo Maggie's words, thank you very much for joining the session. And thank you also for remaining throughout. That's a very good thing. I'll just go through highlights of what we've covered from the beginning, just what stood out as we were going through the session. So the first session that Siki covered, we spoke about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it has forced people to find new ways of engaging with media, and that calls for us to have new forums for engaging with them, establish personal links with journalists, especially now that face-to-face meetings are not very possible. And then it has also forced us to start using social media in a very active way. And then for Moses' session on how to work with media in parliaments, he mentioned that the biggest issue is trust. And the trust issue is on both sides, both the sides of the government and parliaments and the side of the media, with both not trusting each other. And an example he gave was the cartoons that the media draws of MPs like sleeping in parliament. And then he also went through the definitions of media and the different channels and definition of news. What is it that makes up news? And even if you have a definition of media, what is it that makes news able to be covered? Is it the economic angle that the editors and the journalists will consider? Is it the impact? How many people will be affected by that coverage? And then is it real time? Is it recent? Or is it from a long time ago? Is it unique? Is it unusual? And one example he gave was a story of a man that has bitten a dog. Usually it would be the other way around, but this one goes against what we know as the norm. Then he also covered why it's important to build relationships with media and between media and parliaments. And what he mentioned was that the parliaments have to know the main media outlets and the media people who calls the shots. And then something that came up from time to time in each of the sessions is to limit jargon and the use of technical terms. And then to get to know the media more, you should read their stories and know what they like most. Give them pictorials, give them visuals like graphs, dramatic photos, relevant quotes, and then monitor what they're writing about or what they're airing on their media channels. at least you will be able to know what kind of work they're doing, and you'll be able to know what they're saying about your own work. Then an important thing is to know what the media deadlines are, when a newspaper is put to sleep, by when do they need the news, and then also give them facts. That means you have to do your research. And then on the session that I covered on who is a journalist, how are you maintaining your relationships with the media, especially now during the COVID-19 season, because things have changed. So you have to go that extra mile to continue maintaining the relationships that you already have with the media and to build new ones. And then those lists that you have on your phone book, who is it that you can call up at any time, who is in the media, who can give you coverage for your work. Then the session that Florence took us through on how to engage with the media, she went through how to prepare for engaging with the media. Do you know what your key messages are? Do you have visuals? Do you have your facts and figures on hand? Have you done your research? And what are the big issues in your environment at the moment? Is there an election coming up, or what has happened that will be newsworthy to the media? And then again, she also mentioned and stressed that we should not use jargon and we should not use technical terms. That seemed to be something that kept coming up in all the sessions. Then during the role play, we saw that we need to think on our feet when we're dealing with the media. And it's not always that you'll have time to be prepared. And then also when working with the media, it's important to always put ourselves in the shoes of the media and the government, and then that will guide us in how we are engaging with the media. So to close, then there's a session we just had with Maureen, going through the questions of what has worked and what has not worked. And then, of course, we've done the session on Mentimeter with Maggie. That will give us insights on how to prepare for the next session. And we'll take into consideration all the things that you have told us in the Mentimeter, as well as the form that you filled in at the start. So once again, thank you for taking part. And this is just the first of many sessions to come. We will share with you through Paulina a list of the upcoming sessions. And then we'll also base that list on what you've told us in the Mentimeter. And for this session, this was just mainly a way for us to get to know you better and to find out how you engage with the media, so that you can be able to craft the upcoming sessions in a better way to add value for you. Then once we are done with all the modules, the list of which we will send through Paulina and Kurasha, we will issue you with a certificate of completion for the modules. Like Maggie mentioned in the beginning when she was speaking about APHRC, we have a division that carries out research capacity strengthening, and they do a lot of training and capacity strengthening. So we will work with them to be able to issue these certificates to you. And then one other thing I'd like to mention is the rapid response service, which we are offering through this project, the SIPSI project. And through the rapid response service, we're able to offer you evidence and information on any questions or guidance that may be required from the parliamentarians that you work with. A couple of you have already used this service. And in about a week's time, Maggie will be sending out more information on the rapid response service. And we encourage you to take it up, and let's work together. For any evidence or any information that you may require, we'd ask you to use the rapid response service. So that's the recap. We thank you once again for staying on. Thank you for what you've shared. Thank you for taking part actively. Moses, special thanks to you for joining us and for your insights. We really appreciate you working with us. And thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you in the other sessions. And please feel free, if you need to get in touch with us for the rapid response service or for any other requirement you may have on engaging with media or any issue for SRHR, please feel free. We have an MOU with SADC PF, where we are working together on the SRHR project that SADC PF has, and this particular project that we also have, both of which are funded by CEDA. So please feel free. I can see a comment in the chat. Can I say a word if the SG is not saying anything? Yes, Kurasha, please go ahead, because the SG has left. She left earlier. Please go ahead, Kurasha.
Thank you very much, Grace. and colleagues. Yeah, I mean, I caught you at the tail end, but yeah, I could feel the momentum, and this was only, as you said, the first among the many. We will be seeking to engage different sections of or different departments of parliaments to see how we can respond to your needs. We want these trainings to be as needs-based as possible. And it's in line with the mandate of SADC Parliamentary Forum to build the capacity of staff of national parliaments and parliamentarians in the work they're doing. So as a result, this is the context in which we have partnered with the APHRC, and we want to do much more in terms of building your capacity so that you are better able to serve and service your parliaments. As SADC PF Secretariat, on behalf of the Secretary General, we are encouraged by the high number of participation, this being the first meeting, and we look forward to further engaging. And as Grace said, we will be sharing with you. If you talk to your desk officers for the SADC Parliamentary Forum in your parliament, there's a tool, a planning tool called the Master Work Plan, which outlines the various activities, including these trainings, including the ones that we are actually going to have with APHRC, including the ones that we are having through respective national parliaments that are hosting certain aspects of training in the context, under the auspices of the clerks and secretaries general of national parliaments. So do reach out to your desk officers and get a copy of the master plan. If you do not succeed or you need any further support, as Grace said, Paulina from the Secretariat is available. Myself from the Secretariat, I'm also available to support this process. Thank you very much, and over to you, Grace.
Thank you, Kurasha, and thank you for emphasizing that we're here to work together with all of you and all your parliaments. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for staying on. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you to the interpreters as well.
Yes, thank you, the interpreters. Thank you, Ronald, for setting up the Zoom meeting.
Yes. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye, Kupela.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Nomesha.
Okay, bye-bye.